Hi everyone, today I am revisiting a tutorial that I did a few years ago on riveted D-ring attachment. This is a D-ring attachment where the D-ring itself is not in the side seam. Instead, you use rivets to set it to the exterior of the bag without it showing on the inside. I really like to use this technique for a lot of my wristlets. I love the way that it looks. I like that it does not go through the zipper pull itself, so that you can use a decorative zipper pull here if you want to, and it also doesn't put any strain on that zipper. I also like that if you have the wristlet strap on the side here, you can put your wrist through it and still open it without having to open it using the wristlet strap itself. I also like that by riveting the D-ring, it's much closer to the side of the bag and it gives it a nice slim profile. So I'm going to go through the updated way that I do that. I have changed the way that I do it a little bit over the years so that you can see how I like to do that these days. Let's get going. For adding a riveted D-ring, you will need your fabric. You will need 2 scraps of a stabilizing fabric, whether that's waterproof canvas, Decaville, Peltex, a sturdy vinyl. You'll need your D-ring itself and 2 pairs of rivets. As far as tools, you'll need a ruler, you will need a pen, you will need something to punch your holes, as well as your preferred method of setting rivets. You'll need whether that's the hand setting tool or a rivet press, and double-sided tape is not necessary but does come in handy. In order to put a riveted D-ring on your wristlet, you need to have your bag still inside out. Your lining is still open and your zipper at the top here needs to be open inside of your bag. For your D-ring connector piece that we will be riveting onto our bag, you can use woven material or vinyl. I do like to interface my cotton woven with woven interfacing with an extra stabilizing strip down the middle. If you are using a thicker material than quilting weight cotton, you can just put the scrap down the middle of your piece. If you are using canvas, you can choose to omit the woven interfacing on the entire piece, or you can put it on. That is up to you. We now need to measure our connector piece. I use a piece that is 4 inches long, and then the width is double the interior diameter of your D-ring. I am using a 3/4 of an inch D-ring, so I will be measuring 1.5 inches. If you're using a 1 inch D-ring, you will measure 2 inches. If you're using 1/2 inch, you will use 1 inch. Grab your pen and your ruler, and you are going to draw a line down the middle of your piece. A good way to know where you're supposed to be marking it is that it is whatever this interior diameter is. One thing I will note is some 3/4 of an inch hardware that you can buy, especially that which comes on Amazon, is actually 7/8 of an inch. So be sure to check that your interior diameter is actually what it says it is, so that it doesn't sit too loose inside of your connector. If it is too big, that's fine. Just make sure that you measure this piece the appropriate width. So if your 3/4 of an inch hardware does end up being 7/8, you're going to want to cut this piece to be 1 3/4 of an inch wide. Grab your double-sided tape if you're using it, and we're just going to put a strip down the middle. If you're not using double-sided tape, then you can just iron or seam roll this edge into that center line that we just marked there. Using the double-sided tape, I can just press it down, lining the edge of the connector piece up with that center line there. So the raw edges of the long side are meeting in the middle. And then I'm just going to press this here. And what I'm now going to do is just sew around the entire outside of this piece. Using a top stitch, I have sewn around the entire outside of this connector piece. The raw ends are still open there. They will be folded under. And I did start my stitches just in this end piece because that, again, will be hidden underneath when we fold the ends of that connector. As you do more and more of these, you won't actually necessarily need to measure what you're doing here, but I am going to show you the measurements today so that you can be confident that your connector piece is going to fit when you put it on your bag. We now need to fold in the ends of our D-ring connector. Using my cutting mat as a guide, I'm going to fold it in 1/2 inch. You can put a little bit of double-sided tape down to hold that in place, or you can just put a clip on the end. And now we are going to mark where we are going to be punching our holes. You want your hole to be 1/4 inch in from the end where it's folded, centered in the middle of your connector piece. If you are using 3/4 inch hardware, that would mean it's 3/8 inch from either side. For 1-inch hardware, you're going to be measuring in 1/2 inch, and for 1/2 inch hardware, you're going to be measuring in 1/4 inch. Marking on the back here, I'm going to measure down 1/4 inch and measure in 3/8 inch. And by marking it on this back piece, we can make sure that where we are punching, we're not going to be cutting through our stitch line here. I'm just putting a mark, repeating on the other side. We're then going to grab our stabilizing pieces and our D-ring connector piece and punch the holes in those too. For the stabilizing piece, I like a piece that is about 3/4 inch in the length and width, but anything that is approximately that size can be a little smaller. Too much bigger and it may get in the way at the top seam, but that seems to work fine. I'm just going to punch a hole in that also through both at the same time, just right there in the middle. And then looking to see where we marked here on our connector piece, keeping the clip there so it stays in the right spot. I'm just going to punch right over that hole through the folded layers there. So we'll set that aside for now and grab our exterior. We want to place our D-ring at the side of the bag that the zipper opens from. We are going to be punching a hole through both layers at the same time. So you want to make sure that your sides are all sewn up, that you checked that your corners were good, made sure everything was lined up. And if you have any pockets, whether they're exterior pockets or interior pockets, make sure that they are well out of the way. We're going to take our ruler and we're going to measure where we're going to punch the hole. For a 3/4 inch piece of hardware, I'm measuring 1 inch from the end, and I want to measure 1/2 inch from the stitch line. The stitch line I am measuring from is this stitch where the zipper was sewn in, not the top stitching line. It's this stitch where there's smaller length. That's how you know it's the right stitch line. We're measuring 1/2 inch into the main part of the bag and 1 inch up from the seam. And we're just going to put a mark right here. If you were using a different size piece of hardware, you may wish to adjust where you put this spot by 1/8 inch either side. If you're using 1 inch hardware, you would put it 1/8 inch further down. If you're using 1/2 inch, you can still leave it at this spot, or if you would like to have it a little closer to your zipper at the top there, you can move it up 1/8 inch. So this is 1/2 inch here and 1 inch here from this stitch line here and this stitch line here. So I'll just draw that on so you can see. Here and here. That is 1/2 inch and that is 1 inch. The reason that you want to be so certain of those measurements is that we're now going to put a hole in our bag that we worked so hard to make. Grab your tool that you use for making your holes and keeping those layers together so that they are lined up. You can double check on the inside that it's flat. And then we're just going to use our punch. And we're just going to put it over that. And we're just going to punch right through both layers of the exterior. Lining is out of the way. No pockets are in the way. And we've just punched that right through to the exterior on the other side. Now that we have our holes punched, we need to turn our bag out the right way so that we can place our rivets. You are not going to tuck in your lining yet. Here we have the holes that we punched that we are going to be attaching our D-ring through. Grab one of your studs and a stabilizer piece and put that through the hole, and we are then going to pop it in through the hole in our exterior. I'm going to pop one end of this connector piece on and then put our cap. We are not going to set this yet. Flip the bag over, feed on your D-ring, then with your other stud and connector piece, you're going to poke that through the hole on the other side. Then fold your connector around, and you're just going to press that over the top of your stud there. And then we're going to put the other cap on. Before we go and set those rivets, just check that this connector piece is not too tight. If it is too short, or if your hole is punched too far this way, whether that's in your exterior piece or in your connector piece, it may be too tight there, which increases the chances of it pulling through the bag. We have this stabilizer piece behind the rivet on the inside to decrease the likelihood of that rivet pulling through. This is especially important if you're using a softer material like vinyl. But if it is too tight, it may still pop that cap. I'm just going to set that quickly on my rivet press, and then we will have a look and see how it goes. The way that I actually set this is by scrunching up the bag, and then I slide this under my rivet press so that the clamp comes around like this over the rivet, and then just press that down. And then you can see that is set there inside of the bag, but you cannot see the rivet from the lining side. What I'm now going to do is just tuck that lining in. It's not closed up yet, but I will show you what it looks like. On the inside of the bag, you can feel if you press there, that is where the rivet is, but you cannot see it on the lining piece. And then when you grab your wrist strap, you just connect that onto the hook, and there you have your wrist strap secured, but you still have access to the zipper without that being in the way and without putting extra stress on that zipper itself there. You can do it on the other side too. It just gets a little trickier to get into this corner here. It can be done. You just have to be able to maneuver your bag a little bit more if you wanted to do a crossbody strap and have a connector on both sides. And that is how I do a riveted D-ring connector. Thanks, everyone.